Mark today's date down because what we're witnessing right now is beyond parody. The left has officially poisoned itself. I mean, literally, all to spite President Donald J. Trump. You really can't make this stuff up. So Trump issues a very simple health warning, not a ban, not a mandate, just a caution backed by Harvard, Johnson Hopkins, Mount Sinai, some fairly reputable organizations. And what does the left do? They mock him. They roll their eyes, they crank up TikTok, grab a bottle of Tylenol, and then start chugging it on camera like it's some kind of a resistance challenge. And now, ICU admissions. Pregnant women on ventilators, doctors sounding the alarm, the media screaming unfounded while families are suffering the real consequences of a viral stunt gone wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just President Trump. This isn't just Trump derangement syndrome anymore, right? You know, many of these people have had TDS for years, but it's more than that. This is the meme becoming reality. The hatred for Trump has gotten so blind, so toxic that the left is literally willing to risk their own lives and their babies' lives just to own the president. Yeah, I forgot my air quotes on the own. So here's the twist. President Trump was right. The science was already there. Tylenol itself warned about pregnancy risks years ago. But the second Trump's administration said it, they lost their mind. And this is how far gone that they are. Because today, I want to go ahead and break down how the left just poisoned itself with Tylenol to spite Trump and why this story exposes the most dangerous side of Trump derangement syndrome yet. Hit the like button, subscribe. We have a lot to talk about, folks. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So what do we see? Left-wing activists, some of them pregnant, literally posting videos of themselves online, chugging Tylenol on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, all in some twisted attempt to own Trump. This isn't satire. This isn't a parody sketch. This is real life in September 2025. And if you thought Trump derangement syndrome was just screaming at the sky back in 2016, buckle up, folks, because it is now escalated into something way more dangerous. So guys, we're not talking about angry tweets or another orange man bad meltdown in a Prius, guys. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is people actually poisoning themselves and their unborn children because of their hatred for Donald Trump's and him overriding even the most basic instinct of survival. Now, I want to rewind just for a second. What actually happened? Ron, what are you talking about? Well, I'm going to explain. So President Trump's administration put out a very simple health advisory. It wasn't a ban, not a law, not a forced order, just a warning. Studies are showing a possible link between prenatal Tylenol use and higher risk of autism and ADHD. That was it. That was the whole story. But of course, in today's political climate, common sense, health guidance, it's turned into partisan warfare. So basically, Trump says it, then it must be a lie. Trump says it, then the left has to prove him wrong, even if it means swallowing bottle after bottle of Tylenol on camera. Now, folks, this wasn't a political order. It was just a cautionary note. Hey, you might want to be careful taking the Tylenol if you're pregnant, that kind of thing. But in 2025, even caution from Trump is treated like a threat. Here's a little secret, guys. Thousands of people are already calling Chapter about Medicare. And when that many people move in the same direction, there's usually a reason for that. Now, this is exactly why I partner with Chapter, folks. They are the team that most people trust with their Medicare choices. Now, one of our viewers, she said, I called because everyone else was talking about it. And I was curious, and I'm glad I did. So let me ask, are you going to stay outside the herd, or are you going to join what most people are already doing? Now, most people, they're calling the phone number right there on the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. The phone number is 909-563-8279. And of course, right on cue, the media did what it always does. Instead of reporting the facts that this was a health advisory backed by scientific studies, the headlines screamed unfounded claims. President Trump bans Tylenol. Total lies. Completely, either they're blatantly lying or they have a whole lot of earwax jammed in their ears. They completely twisted it into some fear-mongering narrative telling their audience that Trump was waging war on household medicine. CNN, MSNBC, the usual suspects, they mocked it, they mocked him, then they poured gasoline on the fire. And you know how this works, right? Once the media sets the stage, the mob follows. People don't ask questions anymore. They just act out of blind hatred. So what happens next? a wave of so-called resistance content. TikTok challenges, Instagram reels, blue sky clips, pregnant women on video defiantly swallowing Tylenol pills like it was some kind of a badge of honor. Now think about how insane that is. You risking your own health. Never mind that. Risking your baby's health just to prove Donald Trump wrong. Like, that has to be a whole nother level of ignorance here, a whole nother level of TDS. Now, this is what happens when politics becomes religion. It's not about facts. It's not about science. It's about ritual, a ritual of hating Trump no matter what. And folks, this is where memes stop being funny and start becoming deadly. Now, here's where the punchline turns into tragedy. Reports started surfacing. Gateway pundit broke one of the first, a young pregnant woman who wound up in the ICU after overdosing on Tylenol in one of those so-called resistance stunts, on a ventilator, fighting for her life. And it doesn't stop there. Nurses are whispering about an uptick in Tylenol overdoses showing up in emergency rooms. It's still unconfirmed, but even the possibility should terrify people. I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing about Tylenol shortages and empty shelves where Tylenol used to be. I mean, it's crazy what people are doing now because they're just chugging the Tylenol bottles. But because it means the joke, the stunt, the protest, this has clearly gone way too far. This is not a hashtag war. This is real people, real bodies, real hospitals. Politics is literally making people sick. And let me hit you with the hypocrisy, okay? Remember during the pandemic, the left was obsessed with censoring what they called dangerous medical misinformation. Remember that? Anybody remember that? I remember that. They demanded people be deplatformed for questioning the vaccine. They said, trust the science, trust the experts. But now, the moment Trump's administration says, hey, here's what the science is actually showing about Tylenol during pregnancy, the very same people encourage pregnant women to swallow pills on camera for likes and for retweets. They have gone from trust the science to ignore the science they've gone from trust the science to ignore the science if Trump says it. Folks, this is not skepticism. This is suicide by politics. So now here's the part that absolutely just blows their whole narrative and argument apart. This wasn't President Trump pulling science out of thin air. This wasn't some MAGA conspiracy. We're talking about Harvard, guys, fairly reputable school, Johns Hopkins, Mount Sinai, Boston Children's Hospital. Yeah, all those organizations. Guys, Harvard and Boston Children's found that higher acetaminophen levels in umbilical cord blood were directly linked to higher rates of autism and ADHD symptoms later in childhood. Johns Hopkins published data showing prolonged Tylenol usage during pregnancy correlated with developmental and behavioral issues. Mount Sinai, they led a meta-analysis across dozens of studies, all pointing to the same red flag. Heavy prenatal Tylenol exposure is dangerous. So let me ask you, when Harvard, Hopkins, Mount Sinai put this out, where was the outrage when they put it out? Where, where were the mocking headlines? They were nowhere to be found. But the second President Donald Trump's administration repeats the same message, suddenly it's fear-mongering. That right there, guys, tells you it's not about science. It's 100% about politics. And so it gets even worse for the media's narrative, because even Tylenol's own manufacturer, now called Kenvue, formerly known as Johnson & Johnson, has already issued warnings. Back in 2017, they tweeted, "We don't recommend using our products while pregnant." In 2019, they told another expecting mom, "We haven't tested Tylenol for pregnancy safety." That was before Trump ever opened its mouth about it. Before this became a political lightning rod. So if the company that actually makes the product has said it might be a little risky, and the top medical universities are also sounding the alarm, then why is the left still pretending Trump invented this? You see what I'm saying? How idiotic this is? I think it's simple, because Trump is the messenger, and for them, the messenger matters more than the truth does. Yeah, it makes no freaking sense. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and start with this. America is at a turning point. I mean, we've got President Donald J. Trump back in the White House, fighting for our country's future, restoring strength and demanding accountability. But while the political battle rages on, there's another fight. just as fierce. In fact, it's the battle against cancer. And today I want to tell you about a company that is making headlines for a breakthrough that could literally change everything. In fact, today's video is sponsored on behalf of Oncolytics Biotech, traded on the NASDAQ under ticker symbol ONCY. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you already know that I don't just throw out random companies. What I'm about to show you is serious because it's about saving lives and potentially reshaping one of the toughest fights in modern medicine. Oncolytics Biotech is advancing a therapy called pelareorep, and we'll just call it Pella for short. Now, let me tell you guys, folks, this is not some run-of-the-mill drug. This is an intravenous immunotherapy designed to do something that cancer has always been good at avoiding. It trains the body's own immune system to recognize and destroy cancer cells. Now, think of it like what President Trump did to the political system, exposing corruption, forcing the swamp out into the open. Pelareorep is doing the exact same thing with cancer. It's pulling these tumors out of hiding and putting a big old red target on them so that the immune system can attack. So here's the genius behind this. Pella works in two ways. It directly kills cancer cells by replicating inside them and blowing them apart. It activates the immune system, turning what scientists called cold tumors, the ones ignored by your body, into hot tumors that the immune system can now attack. And unlike chemo that ravages healthy cells, Pella selectively goes after the cancer. That's precision. That's America First innovation here. So let's talk about the pancreatic cancer, okay? This is one of the deadliest forms of cancer with a survival rate that's been dismal for decades. But Pella has changed the game. In fact, the data shows that patients treated with Pella plus chemotherapy had a 2-year survival rate of 21.9% compared to just 9.2% with standard chemo alone. That's not incremental improvement. That's a revolution, folks. So here's where it gets even bigger. Oncolytics is working with the FDA right now to launch a registration-enabled pivotal trial in first-line pancreatic cancer before the end of the year. So this means they're not just running some small studies anymore. They're sprinting toward approval. And it's not just pancreatic. Pella is showing 2.5 times survival improvements in colorectal cancer patients with KRAS mutations, a group that typically has almost no good options. We're talking about extending lives in patients who desperately need hope. Plus, the Goblet trial is expanding Pella's reach across multiple GI cancers, even anal carcinoma, and the results are reinforcing the same story. Strong survival benefit, immune activation, and safety. Now, I know what you're thinking. New cancer drugs usually come with brutal side effects. But get this, pelareorep has been given to over 1,200 patients, including 300 in GI cancers, and the safety profile has been consistent and favorable. Most side effects, mild flu-like symptoms. The serious ones, they come from chemo, not Pella. This is why the CEO, Jared Kelly, says Pella is one of the most de-risked immunotherapies not yet approved in GI cancers. Key opinion leaders, the doctors and scientists who actually run the behind-the-scenes studies, they're backing Pella. They've said it clearly. There is a massive unmet need, especially in pancreatic cancer, and pelareorep may be the first immunotherapy that finally cracks the code. Now, folks, just like Trump built his movement by taking on impossible odds, this company is doing the same thing in oncology. So what's next? Well, Q4 2025, start up the pivotal pancreatic cancer trial. End of 2025, new data readout in anal carcinoma. Ongoing regulatory discussions with the FDA for both pancreatic and colorectal cancer. These milestones could be game changers for the company, its shareholders, and most importantly for patients. Here's the bottom line, guys. Oncolytics on the NASDAQ under ticker symbol ONCY is positioning pelareorep as a platform therapy, one that works across multiple cancers, one that could combine with other treatments, and one that has the potential to save lives on a scale that we've never seen before. President Trump always says, America doesn't settle for losing. We fight, we win. And in the fight against cancer, Pella could be the breakthrough that turns the tide. Now, I want to be clear. I am not an investment advisor, and this is not investment advice. Investors should always do their own due diligence before making any investment decisions. But if you're paying attention to innovation, survival data, and companies that could make history, keep your eyes on Oncolytics, ticker symbol ONCY. Now, here's where things get surreal, folks. For years, people joked online that if President Trump told the left not to drink their own urine, that they would just start drinking their own urine on TikTok to spite him. It was a meme. It was a way of mocking how blind, how reactionary, how utterly predictable Trump derangement syndrome has become. But now that meme really doesn't seem like a joke anymore. It really feels like a prophecy because that's exactly what's happened with Tylenol. President Trump's administration issues a common sense advisory. Be careful with Tylenol during pregnancy. Studies show possible risks. And then the response from the left, not debate, not skepticism, not even silence. Instead, they just turned into a resistance stunt where pregnant women film themselves popping pills on camera. This is where politics bleeds into self-destruction, guys. Now imagine risking liver failure, risking your unborn child's health, all for a viral clip with a few likes and maybe a few new followers. It might get 1,000 views and a pat on the back from another angry leftist. But imagine telling yourself, that'll show Trump. I bet you Trump didn't even watch that stupid video. You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, you're swallowing the very substance that the doctors just told you could hurt your baby. That isn't resistance, guys. That is derangement made flesh. Now, this is why the meme has now become reality. Trump hatred has become so blinding that what used to be satire is now daily life. It proves the point that conservatives have been making for years. The left's obsession with hating Trump overrides everything: reason, logic, science, and yes, even survival. And yet, here's the kicker. The media doesn't even care. They're not sounding the alarm. They're not running wall-to-wall coverage. They aren't calling this dangerous misinformation. They're not doing none of that. They're laughing. They're mocking. They're even spinning. But remember back in Trump's first term, the so-called bleach hoax? Anybody remember that? The press twisted a comment out of context, claimed Trump told Americans to inject bleach, and then ran it across every headline for months. They called it reckless, irresponsible, a threat to public health. They demanded accountability. They treated it like the scandal of the century. But now we got pregnant women literally ending up in hospitals after swallowing pills on camera in defiance of Trump's warning. I mean, we have potential spikes in overdoses that are tied to this insane protest. And where's the media? The media is silent over this, or worse, they're dismissing it as a harmless stunt. This is the double standard, folks. When Trump says something, it's automatically dangerous, even if it's twisted out of context. But when the left actually does something dangerous, actually ends up in ICU beds, actually risks unborn children's lives, suddenly it's not a story. Suddenly it's not news. That is why this Tylenol stunt isn't just tragic, it's a real medical scandal. Bigger than the bleach hoax, bigger than any misquote, because this time people really are getting hurt. I mean, this time the cost is measurable. It's undeniable and it's life-threatening. And yet the so-called party of science, their media allies, refuse to cover it with the same energy that they used to attack Trump with. That silence tells you everything. It's not about science, it's about health. It's not about truth, it's about politics. It's always politics. And in the game, in that game, the left would rather just let people poison themselves than admit that President Donald J. Trump might be right. So I want to go ahead and just stop right here, because this isn't just politics anymore. This isn't just headlines or memes or culture war, banter on social media. This is real life tragedy. A pregnant woman right now is lying in the ICU, hooked up to some machines, desperate right now, all because she swallowed too many Tylenols in some desperate attempt to resist Trump. Yeah, now think about that. A life is hanging in the balance, not because of a disease, not because of an accident, but because of politics, because the media twisted a warning, because hatred for Donald J. Trump was allowed to override the most basic instinct every mother has to protect her unborn child. And it's not just one case. Nurses are whispering about a wave of overdoses. Doctors are raising red flags. Families are being blindsided because their loved ones thought that they were joining some noble protest, but really they were poisoning themselves. So what about those unborn babies, the innocent lives at the center of insanity? They never asked to be pawns in a culture war. They never asked to be the collateral damage of Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, but unfortunately, they're the ones that are most at risk. That's the human cost that children who may come into this world already facing developmental challenges, all because these mothers were told, don't listen to Trump. This is not a joke, guys. This isn't satire. This is deadly outcome of a movement that hates Trump more than it loves life. And so this is where we need to kind of zoom out, because the implications are huge. They're massive. For years, people have laughed at Trump derangement syndrome, screaming at the sky videos, the meltdowns in the cars, the hashtags. But today we can see that TDS is not just ridiculous, it is destructive. The lesson here? Because there is a lesson here. The real danger isn't Donald Trump's words. The real danger is the left's refusal to think rationally whenever Trump is involved. If Trump says the sky is blue, they will say it's purple. If Trump cites Harvard and Johns Hopkins, they're going to dismiss it as MAGA conspiracy. They're not rejecting Trump. They're rejecting reality itself. And the consequences aren't abstract. They're measured in ER visits, in ICU beds, in unborn children harmed before they even take their first breath. That's the cost of this blind hatred. So ask yourself, if people are willing to risk their own lives over some Tylenol, then what's next? What happens when Trump announces a new food safety warning? What happens when his administration rolls out a new medical advisory? Will the left line up to defy it, even if it means hurting themselves again? Like, this is why we say it over and over and over. Trump derangement syndrome is the single most dangerous mental condition in America today. It warps minds, it destroys families, and now it literally poisons people. So here we are, guys. The left has finally proved the meme true. They poison themselves just to spite Trump. And in doing so, they've shown the world exactly what happens when hate matters more than truth. Like, subscribe, share this video, and let everybody see the cost of blind Trump hatred, because if this doesn't wake people up, nothing will.